Greetings, my name is Ryan Nicksch. I'm a solutions architect with Amazon Web Services. Joining me here today is Eduardo supporting IBM. Eduardo, say hi.
Hi Ryan, hi everyone. I'm a partner solutions architect with Amazon Web Services. Good to see you all.
Eduardo, you and I got together, it feels like a year ago, to talk about how IBM is helping customers process data, and since then a lot has changed in the background. We've had a couple of additions, we've had some secret sauce on the AWS side added in. I want to take a moment and run through what are customers doing with IBM watsonx Orchestrate, what are customers doing with IBM watsonx for data, and focusing on two things: security and what are some of the black magic things that are increasing the performance in data flows, specifically in AI use cases.
Right, this has become quite critical, as you are aware, with agentic AI use cases now popping up everywhere, and with the large adoption of generative AI, right? So what's happening with customers is that they need to have a secure and efficient way to use their corporate data, to create their AI agents, to create automated workflows for their processes, so that they can take advantage of agentic AI use cases and generative AI use cases, and also enhance their customer experience by using these tools.
So that data is going to start off somewhere. So I'm assuming within their AWS customer account, they're going to have that data possibly in an S3 bucket. watsonx.data, are they deploying that customer deployed in their accounts, or are they utilizing something like a SaaS version?
So there are different options on the AWS marketplace. Customers can use the SaaS through the AWS marketplace, and that's a fully managed solution by IBM. Customers don't have to deploy anything actually on their account. Now you may ask me, well, how is data moving between these two different accounts, right? So one of the things IBM did now with watsonx.data SaaS is they've added support for PrivateLink, which will help you reduce your egress costs and increase security.
Let's go add in some of these building blocks. So inside my customer account, we're going to have some data over here, and that's probably going to be in an ingest sort of.
Correct. It's going to be some kind of raw data in an S3 bucket on a data lake.
We did say that we've got watsonx.data as a SaaS solution over there.
In watsonx.data, you're going to have different engines to process your data. So things like Spark or Gluten.
Gluten's new.
Gluten's new. It's actually a way to accelerate your Spark queries, so to gain that extra performance that you mentioned about, right? So when you're preparing a large volumes of data, you can use Gluten now to accelerate all that process, to get your raw data and get that data in a transformed way that you can use that for generative AI applications and agentic AI use cases.
Right, so let's start from the customer's account side. We've got information coming in through an S3 bucket over here. We're probably going to want to have some event-driven process over here.
So you need to imagine this is going to be a constant flow of data coming into the customer account, right? And so you want to be able to invoke your Spark and Gluten jobs in watsonx.data to prepare that data as it comes through your data ingestion pipeline.
Right, so I'm thinking event bridge, maybe some sort of a step function over here as well.
Yeah.
We're going to push that probably to AWS Lambda.
Correct.
From Lambda, where are we going to go? That's going to traverse some sort of private link infrastructure.
Absolutely. So you're going to use now AWS PrivateLink to trigger your jobs in watsonx.data.
So that's my data coming out of Lambda once it has done its invocation. And is it going to flow directly over the private link, or are we sitting with some sort of intermediary SageMaker step here?
We're going to use SageMaker at a later step. Once we have
so
that
this
data
is going to go
prepared,
directly over the private link here, and it's going to come into watsonx for data SaaS.
Correct. And then you're going to use these engines to work on your data so that you can.
There's an intermediary step here.
There is an intermediary step.
We're going to probably take advantage of a IAM role over here that we're going
Correct.
to assume, and that's going to be utilizing our secure token service, giving us credential
Absolutely.
cycling.
And then you can use a least privilege principle here and say, hey, my Spark engine can access my data lake, fetch this information from my source bucket, and then it can process that information, and you're going to put the processed data.
That information is actually going to end up flowing backwards and forwards, and because we're fetching it out of this bucket,
You're
processing it,
and then storing on a different folder on your bucket, or a completely different bucket.
Potentially. I'm going to put two separate buckets there for an input and an output sort of flow over here. Again, once it's processed over here by Spark and Gluten, it can be consumed elsewhere in the customer's architecture.
So now imagine that we need to have this data for our AI agents or a RAG generative AI application. We need to get that data and turn that into a vector representation of the data. That's where the SageMaker part comes into play. So you could still use the same concept of event bridge and step functions to monitor that bucket. And then you can invoke SageMaker. And IBM has models available on AWS like Granite embeddings, which is going to take that data and turn it into a vector representation. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say that this is super cool because we've got customers that are using IBM models in different locations. I think it's important to call out that they could be utilizing this on AWS SageMaker itself.
Absolutely. And it's super easy to use. It's available on the marketplace. It's available directly on SageMaker. So it's very easy for customers to subscribe to the Granite models and start using them. Now, once you've turned that into vectors, you need to push this somewhere over here. So that's where...
Again, going to flow across our private link, but now we're going to come into some sort of data storage inside.
Correct. And this is where there are two different options available on watsonx.data. The new one being AstraDB. So you have two different types of vector stores for different use cases, and you can push that information now, the vector representation, into these vector stores so that you can implement your AI agents or your RAG patterns, right? So once again, this would flow over here through PrivateLink to store the vector information in your databases.
There's a couple of things at play over here. Firstly, you've got the evolutions within Watson itself that are providing a performance benefit. There are two things here that stand out for me, and that is the ability to assume roles. It's not new in AWS, but it's very new in this context. And then the PrivateLink really helps in terms of two things. No information is actually traversing a public internet here.
Correct.
The second thing is from a data transfer cost perspective, that's also a bit of a penny saver over there. What about customers that have a external application, some sort of AI use case where they want to consume this once it's already in a vector state?
So let's look at two different options here. Imagine that you have some kind of front-end application with APIs. You could have something like API gateway on the customer account.
This is going to be separate to the customer's.
But there's some type of some type of application using generative AI, right? So the flow would be you make API calls, and that could be an API gateway sitting there. And this again can involve something like a Lambda function, right? Hey, answer me something about my corporate documents or my processes, right? And that Lambda function, in this particular case, we're talking about a RAG use case. So that Lambda is going to use the Granite model on SageMaker to turn that user query into a vector representation. And it's going to send that into watsonx.data, again through the PrivateLink, to do the similarity search against the databases. And it's going to fetch that information the customer is looking for. It's going to retrieve that data. And this is where something new comes into the picture now.
This is going to be, I'm assuming, Bedrock running a Granite model again.
Correct.
And again, we're utilizing that.
And then once you have that information back from the vector store, you can enrich the user prompt and send that request to Bedrock to generate your response. Right?
Ultimately, that's still going to flow back out through our API gateway to that consuming application.
And then what's different here that you can also do, so this is one way, right? But imagine that customers want to use this to build their agentic AI solutions, and they use watsonx Orchestrate SaaS, which is also available on AWS, by the way. Once you have this data over here, you can also create your AI agents on watsonx Orchestrate and directly consume the information coming from your vector store in watsonx.data.
This is not it's not an absolute or. Depending on the size and scope of the project, we could see customers using a combination of these.
Absolutely.
Wherever it makes the best fit for their sort of applications. Your watsonx Orchestrate is going to have watsonx.data as an underlying sort of building block. So am I correct in assuming that if you've got Orchestrate SaaS, you automatically have this, or are they two separate products?
Two separate products, so they're two separate offers. watsonx Orchestrate gives you the ability to connect your agents into external vector stores, and you can do the similarity search for your agents against that vector source. So if you have watsonx.data, and you can configure watsonx Orchestrate to fetch information from .data. Now, the other thing that can be done here, and this is quite cool, watsonx.data is a no-code platform for agent development, but they also cater for developers. So they have something called the ADK, which is the Agent Development Kit. And with ADK, what you can do, as you create an agent, watsonx Orchestrate will, out of the box, want to use Granite. But let's say if you want to use an agent with a different large language model, with ADK, you can actually connect your agent to Bedrock, and you can run Anthropic Claude or Llama, whatever model you want to use there. So, it's all about giving customers this broad choice of tools that they can use to create these use cases.
And another thing is, don't lose sight that customers have data and information in various different locations.
Correct.
So this could be coming back through something like a transit gateway to on-premises. watsonx Orchestrate could be hooking into relational databases, data stores in Amazon. So there's a lot of information flowing backwards and forwards.
You could be even have information coming from mainframe through transit gateway and direct connect, landing on your S3 by using something called IBM Datagate for watsonx.data.
Correct.
So there are different types of data sources that you can be using to create your generative AI use cases.
What if I'm a customer and I want to dive deeper into specifically Gluten, Milvus? Is that reach out to the IBM account team? Where's their documentation?
Correct. There's plenty of documentation on the IBM website about this, but reach out to your IBM representative. And we work together with IBM very closely for customers that want to implement this type of solution on AWS. So it's going to be like IBM and AWS working together to help customers design these types of applications.
And then finally, both of these SaaS products are available via the AWS Marketplace, so do check out those marketplace listings. And Eduardo, thank you as always. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.